Hi, welcome. We are officially recording. Welcome, Jake. And I'm Greg from the JP Anthony Group here, real estate team here in Phoenix. And today we're just going to start off a small series of just some informational real estate news, what's going on, because there's some really common questions that always come up. So today I kind of wanted to tackle one of the biggest ones, touch on that a little bit, is it a good time to buy? What's the market doing? There's a lot of real big global questions, but how are you feeling overall just on that general
Yeah,
consensus? Is I want to get your input on that because Jake's been in the business for quite a while. He's been around the block, literally looking through homes and selling a lot of homes, but curious on your thoughts on the discussion with that question.
yeah. Well, there's a couple parts to that. I think the first thing that we need to do is just accept reality. And that's sometimes a hard and bitter pill to swallow. And the reality is, it's not, there's never an ideal time to buy or sell. Occasionally, we'll have these amazing, perfect points. And the thing is, by the time the market actually reacts to those, you've missed the mark. Like the timing on that is so crucial, and it's very hard to hit a bullseye on those.
Yeah.
Now, we did have one of those moments where prices were still relatively great for a buyer. We weren't necessarily in a crazy seller's market, and interest rates were super, super low. But that was like, almost 3 years ago now, and it was a very small window. So first, we just have to accept reality. It's very rare you're going to have the perfect time to buy or sell. That's the first thing. Now, the second thing that we have to accept is there are things that we can just not change. So I know for buyers, they kind of have a double whammy right now. They have prices, which have just seemed to skyrocket overnight. And all of us are asking the question is, when is that going to change?
Exactly.
And we'll dig into that a little bit more. And then I think the second big thing for buyers is, gosh, interest rates seem to be going nuts. And when is that going to change? And those are both really good questions. So let's actually start with interest rates. So, we've gotten really spoiled over the last few years that literally the history of American financial system, we've had the lowest interest rates ever. Okay, so
There's been a lot of memes and stats.
Yeah.
That one stat that we were talking about the other day was January 2021 to today, the interest rate and the prices compare. But I think I'll have you elaborate more on the interest rates. But what people seem to do is they latch on to that, like you're saying, is they're almost like, I wish I would have bought Netflix, but you can't focus on, because they're trying to time the stock market too. But the best way to start investing was yesterday, and the next best thing is today type thing. So we have to just embrace it. So
you do. Yeah. So, I mean, timing it, it's impossible to ever know if you're going to time it 100% correctly. And we have gotten spoiled with the low interest rates, but we also have to look at where interest rates have been. Okay. And if we look at where interest rates have been, we're not in a bad place. We're not in a phenomenal place, but we're not in a bad place. Are they super fantastic, the best deal of your life right now? No, we have to accept that they're not. They really aren't. But here's the really great thing about interest rates. They don't just go up, they also go down. And that's something that's really important to remember as a home buyer is the market you buy in interest rate wise is not the market that you have to stay in. Because if you buy in a market where the interest rate is a little bit higher, all you have to do is wait a year or two, and then you can refinance when the market is back down and interest rates are nice and low.
Right. So then would you say, the price is probably more important than the interest rate? Because you can refinance, but you can't 2 years down the line say, contact the seller, say, I didn't really think I wanted to pay that original amount. Can we change that?
Unfortunately,
I don't think that's going to work very well. Yeah.
No, I don't think anyone would be happy about that.
No.
So I think, that's the important thing to keep kind of a frame of reference is interest rates change and you can change your interest rate when they go lower. Just refinance. So that's pretty easy to do. The second thing to keep in mind is really focus on the pricing. And I think you brought up a really good point. Prices really don't go backwards. Now, have we had points in history in the market where, due to the economic climate, that prices do depreciate for a little while? Yeah, they do. But the other thing that's kind of important to remember during those times is interest rates tend to be pretty high during those moments as well.
Yeah.
And the market is slow to react. And then, the government will step in and say, we need to do something. And then there'll be a short window again where they drop interest rates in order to bolster economic activity. And again, how well can you time that? But I think the more important thing to keep in mind is, if we look back since 1980, okay, out of the last, one, two, three, four, five, six-ish recessions, only 2 of those have home prices overall across the country gone down.
And that everyone wants. A lot of times you have, 2008, we have an apple and an orange type of thing, and everyone's, well, what if they think that they're exactly the same? But there's a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences, because that was a whole different world, literally, back then. So
it was a whole different world. So you have a lot of economic pressures that were going on during that time. Everything from war to the stock market, to insurance companies and banks. Everyone got tied up in all this big mess of a tangled web. And the thing
it's
is,
almost like a perfect storm with all
it really is.
all of them going on at the same time. Yeah,
it really is. And people forget that the home market is very subject to the rest of the economy. So home prices, but also mortgage rates, right?
Yeah.
So it was just a domino effect there for the most part. It wasn't something that originated within housing itself. Now, that doesn't mean that because the economy isn't doing great, that home prices are not going to go up, or that interest rates are not going to be down. Because that's simply not true when we look back at history. So, of those 6, 4 of those recessions, home prices actually went up on a normal appreciation, which is between 3 to 7%, depending on your market. And so even let's say 2008, okay, for most major metropolitan areas, right, home prices went down. But there were areas in the country, because remember, markets are very regional. So there were areas of the country where home prices actually stayed the same or went up. So it's very localized too, to your specific market and what pressures and activities are going on there. So I think those are really 2 important things to keep in mind. And even as we're moving into what a lot would call the next big recession coming up, we have to look at history, and history tells us, for the most part, that home prices either stay the same or go up. And then the next thing that we really need to look at is what is going on in your local economy, right? So just like in 2008, where, a majority went down, but some stayed the same and went up. What's happening in Phoenix? And I think everyone who lives here, we can see it all around us. There is a massive amount of economic activity going on. Companies are moving here left and right. We have over 500 households moving here every single day.
500 a day. That's nuts.
A day.
It's nuts.
Correct.
It just, in the last year, it's crazy. Just in 1 year.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know if anyone really would have predicted that much growth that fast.
No. I mean, I think what people are beginning to realize, for companies is, we have a relatively low cost of living in comparison to where most major corporate hubs are.
Well, compared to California, a lot of times, it's like
East and
not
West
that
Coast.
far off, but
Sure.
the cost of living was so drastic. But now they're starting to meld a little bit over the last year, maybe. But
yeah, absolutely. It's getting closer,
still,
but it's still cheaper.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, we have a large workforce. We have universities here, which produce decent quality workforce, and a lot of them.
Yep.
So, that's what companies want. They want skilled labor.
Yep.
And the last thing to keep in mind is we're kind of a hub just geographically. If you think about where we are on the map,
Yep.
we're like at the center of the hub between the Southwest and the West Coast, but also if you're going to go east.
Yeah.
Right. So it just makes sense that this is a hub, highway wise, geographic wise, for trades of goods, for supply chain.
Yeah.
And then, if you're going to have a corporate hub here, right, it's kind of centrally located for people to come and go.
Yeah. And I mean, for me personally, there's so many getaways, just Sedona, Vegas, and LA, and San Diego. And then it's not far to Denver or even Mexico or Rocky Point, or, there's just so many options.
Right.
And of course, got the sun and the hiking and all that sort of thing. But you touched on kind of like two different things. It really is the emotional side, and then there's the data, because people like to freak out. They'll talk to a neighbor, someone down the street, and so sold or bought. They hear all this secondary information sometimes, and they try to latch. They don't try to, but a lot of times just by default they'll latch onto the negative. Like, oh, or panic, and then they just start to get fueled by that. But if you look at the data, and you look backwards, the data history always repeats itself. So we have to try to look at it in a sensible way as well.
Yeah. And really, I think the best way to contextualize it is let's look at prices, right? So obviously demand wise, with all the people moving here, there's no shortage of demand. And we could look at a bunch of graphs and stats. We could look at some things that we look at as realtors: active listing count, how many are under contract. So right now we have 7,939 active listings, but there are 8,022 under contract. So we have more homes sold than are available. That we call that an absorption rate. So that's something important to look at. That tells us our demand is still higher than our supply. Is that changing a little bit? Sure. With interest rates, of course, that's going to change. People that were maybe opportunistic buyers at one point that really weren't motivated for any specific reason to buy or sell, but were like, hey, let's just take advantage of the opportunity that's in front of us. Those people are being weeded out with higher interest rates. And really what we're focused on now is people who have to make a move, right?
Right.
Someone got a job and is coming here, they have to make a move. Someone who is getting a job somewhere else and moving from here, they have to make a move. So that's really who's in the market, and we're in no short supply with all the people moving here. But I would almost say, more importantly, let me see if I can share my screen here.
Just some visual, some of those visual charts and memes I've seen with the data really, I mean, because I'm a visual person too, like most of us seem to be, but it's just so much easier to understand than just because it gets to be so much interest rates and prices and economy and government, who's in office, and it gets to be a lot. And I think people can kind of shut down from that too. And
they
then
can,
don't do anything.
Sure, absolutely. This is something that I love to look at, and it's just the median price currently in our county. So this is Maricopa County. I don't think I'm going to be able to share my screen. For some reason, it's not working. But right now, currently, across all listings of any kind, the average closed sale price is $628,000.
That's crazy.
Okay, let's take it even further. Okay, most people want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, right? Okay, if I filter it down to that, anything that's 3-bedroom, 2-bath, the current average sale price of a home that recently sold is $732,000 if it's a 3-2.
And that's Maricopa County.
That's
only,
within
right?
Maricopa County alone. Yeah, I mean, of course, we could look at other parts of the state, but really our regional market is the county, because northern Arizona and southern Arizona and eastern and western Arizona, totally different markets, totally different price points, buyer needs, et cetera, and totally different motivations too, why people buy those homes. A lot of those homes can be vacation homes, retirement homes. So, but Think about that for a second. Like, let that frame your mind.
That's
Just,
crazy.
3 years ago, like we were in
The
the high
fours was,
threes, low fours.
yeah.
Okay. That was just 3 years ago.
Yeah. And
Okay.
that's what I mean, this is more of a, maybe a, next time we talk in video, but question, but I mean, a lot of people are feeling they're being pushed out of the market, and, they're like, the incomes are not increasing at the same speed. So a lot of people are nervous and not really sure what to do. Rent prices aren't really slowing down as well. So it's kind of
Yeah.
a nervous feeling for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that most people need to just face. Like,
Well, like
and
you first brought up, your first point, it's kind of embrace it. This is what it is. So
it is. Yeah, you have to accept where we are now in order to really decide how do you move forward and what's the best decision for you. And here's the reality that I think most people don't even think about as a renter. Now, I'm not saying that everyone doesn't get necessarily. There are some people that get lucky and they have a landlord who has no idea what current rent
yeah,
is.
yeah,
They have some
exactly.
sweet deal. There are those people out
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
For
There's
most
a
people,
few.
that's just not true anymore. Um, Everyone as a renter is already paying a mortgage. Just think about that for a second.
Just someone else's mortgage.
You're paying someone
Yeah,
else's.
yeah, exactly. I stole your thunder.
Yeah. You're paying
You're
what we
welcome.
call
Yeah.
TITI
Yeah.
plus owner dividends.
Yeah.
You're paying their principal, you're paying their interest,
Yeah.
their taxes, and their insurance, plus a profit. You are
Yeah.
paying that as a
Yeah.
renter.
Yeah.
Do you think they're really renting to you and not making money? You're already
No, they're
paying.
definitely making money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're already paying it. So let's just get that in
Mm-hmm.
our minds, because I think for a lot of people it is scary, the thought of having to pay something that is fully your responsibility, but you're already doing it.
Exactly. It just feels like there's a little buffer for them and it's a safety
Sure.
zone or something, but
Yeah. Now, I think for renters, what sometimes happens is the rental market does lag behind in pricing in comparison to the resale market.
yeah, I mean, not a lot of time. I mean, it probably takes a little bit to catch up, but
Yeah,
with the general
3 to 6 months
3, 6, yeah.
usually behind. But then here's the thing, right? That amount of time, let's say 6 months, right? That could be the difference between you uh, getting a new lease or renewing your lease,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So at that point, that's when your landlord's going to do that price hike and increase. And we saw it this year. I don't know, and we saw it last year. I don't know how many buyers that we worked with or that were like, you know what, we're buying just because my landlord called us and
Yeah.
said we're raising the price $500, $800,
Well, a
1,000.
lot of them were in those COVID discounted leases as well, I think, and then they just went boop,
Right.
$500 type of thing. Not
Yeah,
many people want
overnight.
to spend $500 more a month on their
Exactly.
apartment.
Yeah, exactly. For
Yeah,
something that you don't own, you
yeah,
don't gain any equity in, and you're just throwing money away.
yeah, exactly. So the answer is yes or no, or depends on your situation.
I think it depends on your
Yeah,
situation. If you have
yeah.
another year on your lease and you're locked in at a great
Hmm.
price, you know, I don't know if you want to move again.
Yeah,
You know, it may just be the reality of, you know, it's too stressful to pack up, and if you have kids or
yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
work-life balance, it may not just be a good time for you, and that's totally okay. But there's also the other reality to think about is if prices already for a 3.2, which is what most people want to buy when they buy a
hmm
home, are in the 700s, almost mid 700s. We're getting pretty close. If we're at a normal appreciation rate for homes, which is less than 10%, 10% is still pretty high, but I think that's about where we'll be. I mean, we're talking about being in the eights.
yeah. I mean, it's
So
reality, and it's
it
just
is.
gonna keep going up. So embrace it. Knock on your manager's door and ask for a raise, or right, get the promotion, go out and start some side hustle, whatever it takes, right? just
Yeah.
to get
But
ahead.
like you said, I want to reiterate that it's not like wages have gone up drastically or are going to go up drastically. Those are way lagging behind everything else.
Exactly.
Years behind. So even if we have a light year of appreciation, let's say it's 5%, we're still in the high sevens.
Yeah.
And the reality is most people at that price with an interest rate that's also higher probably can't get what they want.
Exactly.
And even if the interest rate was lower, they're probably going to have to compromise on what they're getting. It's not going to be the dream home.
But then, you know, sometimes maybe it's a sidestep. You get it back into the market, and then you move up to that dream home, or you refinance, or so it may not be like the perfect. You got like how we plan it out. Everyone wants the perfect method. Is you just get into this nice home, and then you don't have to move again because that's a lot of pain and it's costly to move. And I've done enough of that in my lifetime, but it's also worth it when you are in a better situation and you starting to, you know, you have your own equity building as well. So
yeah, you want to keep a home 5 to 7 years, so at least you're getting some equity out of it. Absolutely. Yeah, you don't want to make emotional moves. And I think this is the hard part about houses is it's such an emotional thing for people. There's such an emotional attachment, but really you should think about a house like an investment. Just like if you're buying a stock portfolio or any kind of investment, that's really what a home is. It's kind of like a really big savings account for you that you every time you put money in every month, you're getting that money held for you in a savings account that's yielding interests in your equity through equity gains every single year. So if you frame it in that position, right, you can make a much less emotional decision about the home. It doesn't have to be the dream home. It could be the starter home.
Yeah. I treated my last home especially like that too. I had this 5-year plan, 3 to 5 year, whatever, and I ended up exiting at 4 years. So it's a right on. Usually it doesn't always work with that, but a lot of sweat equity. I only like with the money that I put into it, I was looking at my ROI if I was going to get it back, rather than, you know, if you're going to be in it for a while, just throw the pool in or all these other things that may not be 100% back, but maybe here. Depends on the area. Probably not Minnesota, but it's just having that thought of how much you're putting into it. And then I did a lot of, you know, like the sweat equity. I wasn't paying a lot of extra labor fees and stuff because I had more time to work on it, and a little bit of YouTube along the way. And then I was able to take some profit out of it and move on. So
yeah,
cool.
And even if you don't, here's the other thing that people get worried about. They're like, what if I gain no equity? What if we're in a huge economic slump and I gain nothing? Well, at the very worst, all you're going to do is get all the money that you put into it, right? But when you're renting, you don't get any money back. You might get your deposit back if you took really good care of your place.
After they take the cleaning fees out and everything else. Usually, a lot of times they don't try to give you much back.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, I don't want to keep these too long. We're gonna the plan is to do, you know, as questions come up and try to really help and solidify some answers to some. I mean, there's not perfect answers to a lot of these types of questions because there's, you know, general debate, but I know people get really strong-willed and they think that's the only way, but it really does depend. But it's looking at the data and the history, like you said, and just trying to make yourself aware and up to speed on what's going on in the market. So thanks, Jake, and
absolutely.
Until next video, go ahead and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.
Sounds good. Bye.